Contention 1 is meritocracy 1. The scholastic aptitude test, euphemistically called the SAT, represents an educational paradigm shift instead of tests acquired on the SAT proclaims to test intellectual abilities. Deal for low-scoring people get less educational attention. The rational divisibility paradigm has been meritocratic efficiency. The paradigm has involved all the conception of the ability table across the lives, and the SAT was an instrument of meritocracy. But when it happens, this paradigm means that raise gap test scores consistently channels African Americans a lower grade education. This alienates them from education. High job rates, incarceration rates, and unemployment disproportionately like African American. We have two educational systems. They are until the remaining barriers may be a paradigm we use for thinking about human ability. And 2, this is a sham. The claims that the SAT is an objective scientific test masses its social and political world of sorts of societies and worthy and unworthy classes. How 18. This core belief in objective metric is a problem in the original of the SAT way to challenge elitism and using merit instead of familiar back in the minute of meritocracy as a dual ideology, purpose of capitalism and Chinese existence, structural issues like inequalities and instead positive issues about individual efforts and these are justify existing inequality and these ideologies work in education, SAT questions, systematically advantage to the white students over black Latinos. That is destiny to create inequality that benefits against capitalist industry and promotes neoliberal individuals, and the problem is not with the sort of and the problems need to source students at all. 3, this predictive paradigm is a holdover from the eugenic movements, focused on aptitude rather than subject mastery as a cover for racial inclusion. Source 12. Universities developed SATs, ACTs, and learned the SAT making testing in the capacity to higher education and eugenics. While the SAT was introduced was an IQ just measured intellectual aptitude and subject mastery. It does not work to predict grades. And 4, definitely the test can't be reformed. Aptitude tests are designated to produce a bell curve in order to be standardized. Out 18. The SAT was created by women who believe that different races and ethnicities were biologically more intelligent than the SAT is certain to break from its eugenic roots and serves the same purpose to human population, but even high scores valued and low scores unvalued. The SAT builds inequality into its very DNA. The process of SAT test question selection is flawed and racially biased, but the process created a self-reinforcing cycle of race and class inequality. The SAT is called race and officially neutral, but empirically produces and reproduces racialized outcomes. The SAT is destroyed and starts the human population. The curve assumption that building the SAT extends directly from the eugenic movements. In this way, the SAT is required to produce inequality in a racist capitalist system. The SAT usually stratifies the human population by race and class should come as a no surprise. And 4, this goes beyond education. The SAT is an attempt to dissect and predict human potential to sort societies into our tenant roles. It's a dream of total control. Leaving 99 with the SAT in China as the country as the US has become the world's leader at the leading IQ test system of the system for ranking people up, I suppose, or the expression in the test score, the testing. We're going beyond the movement of aptitude to the test. I just want to achieve to understand the whole spectrum of the human abilities. The funding period of the ETS represents all across fields, just as the Manhattan Project had to split the atom. The ETS would decode the mind, it would map and decode the personalities, and 5, the impact of securitization and endless interventionism. Dalby 97, the assumption that most of the things are knowable and predictable is intimately related. The formulation of security and the control of race, control and predictability stages of the interventions offer the possibility of managing international politics as history suggests. This may be a dangerous illusion that was power to suggest the list of issues of persons are to be taken more serious. And 7, inequality is the biggest source of preventable death. We must prioritize its reduction. And 17, the densely high defense exists. One about groups have more access to goods, resources, and opportunity than other groups. Social balance over day-to-day life is a product of inequality. When it comes to premature death, the disaster declared yet the disaster is even worse. More than 60,000 black people died prematurely because of inequality. Poverty and income inequality, single agents of early death. But inequality is wrong because we have the means to fix it. 8 is meritocracy, the lifeblood of capitalism. It's an ideological structure that is crucial to explain away the system failings. Without it, it will collapse. Wolf 19. It failures the widely person capitalism and vanish capitalism. Blame problems on meritocracy. Merit ideology functions as a defense for capitalism. The meritocratic logic does offer no jobs. Can only blame themselves meritocracy and then educational system is key to police within are important because capitalism forever depends on them. They employ bad jobs and insufficient incomes are not blamed on the capitalist economic system. They do not so blame but the systems could have that awful long ago. Meritocracy would be direct blame for capitalism's failures and plan in the United States colleges and universities ought not consider SAT and ACT and undergraduate admissions decisions. Contention 2, put down your pencil. The standardized tests like the SAT are justified to the neoliberal appeal that there is no alternative. This is an education reform to focus on small scale projects that can be addressed structural inequalities. The SAT is a radical act that can transform education paradigms away from a focus on ability based. 18. The test will contain racism, misogyny, content, racism, improvements among privileged groups may not be accessible, may not be generally accessible to the SAT protocol of the world. Imagine meritocracy, the SAT somehow works as often for the problem that comes down to the idea that we must test them ranking the first, that we must produce and we must replace these admissions measures multi-day interviews with the application for once that working in the test and the curricular development entry pays to keep evaluating the students for the best argument for the SAT. The examinations remain slightly better starting mechanism presented with the choice many educators all for nothing, and 2, college admissions and powerful signals that society about what is valued. Starting with admissions decisions is an important place to begin, not an endpoint. MCCP 16 takes culture sense message that emphasizes personal success and investment of the time. There's no singular answer. The college admissions can play a key role. Admissions process inevitably send a message about what colleges value. College influence beyond behavior ability to students as it can exacerbate singular focus on achievement or motivate commitment to others. College admissions can generate positive changes in young people's ethical commitments. Admissions needs to send a clear signal. Students' school commitments are the heart of the ethical citizenship. We recommend alleviating excessive academic performance pressure and redefining achievement. And then we recognize that these are recommendations only address pieces of the complex ones. So we cannot bring about change unless educational institutions set values. And 3 is be highly skeptical of protesting arguments that testing industrial complexes waging a propaganda war to justify existing inequality. Hernandez 18 report contrast with measuring systems of book published by scholars side of the testing industry argues that his optional problems are need to pay attention to deeper purpose. Standardized tests normally exclude people of color. Efficiency can no longer be used as used to maintain a flawed system. From academics to policymakers, people say that standardized tests are better at predicting the college outcomes. Even if standardized tests predict the achievement, they would be doing so on the basis of accumulated resources that have helped children from privileged backgrounds. We have to stop turning away students from the higher education because their backgrounds have not afforded them the same opportunity we've inherited. Society built on great injustice. The time has come to end the systemic inequality. Ending the use of standardized tests is one way that we can do so. And 4 is to reject hyperbolic justifications for testing. We want to see join the student-led anti-testing movement. Crucial to positive change. Brian, 15, ducking coverage was preventing from getting competitive problem. There's a similar short trade by how in the school actions across the nation. Standardized testing, we're imposing the school house not to protect our children from nuclear annihilation, but to protect them from the education malpractice. Converge standardized testing, the need to vaccinate children against deadly infectious diseases. Ending the test would endanger students and endanger schools. Educators are intaking and pointing to evidence that tests do more harm than good. We're citing the Cold War. War different sort of thousands are engaging in civil disobedience by refusing to participate. Our current test-driven culture simply doesn't allow for trust and collaboration.
How much securitization do you solve?
It's not like a number, like it can't be like we solve 7.8 securitization.
Sure, so the Dalby evidence,
wait,
hold on. So the Dalby evidence talks about securitization in the context of like intervention in foreign countries.
Yeah.
Do you resolve that?
Yeah.
How?
We have made claims about the idea of predicting and knowing things like how well someone will do on like an SAT. It predicts how well their life will do.
So you're telling me that if we get rid of the SAT in college admissions decision, that means that the Iraq, like things like the Iraq War will never happen again?
I mean, like that. We don't have a big like solvency claim like Iraq War. Our argument is that constantly trying to know more things.
Is it that you materially end up like resolving these interventions from happening, or that the logic of the interventions is like the same thing?
We stop the logic in the interventions or the logic of
but do you stop those interventions
to justify them?
Like, do you stop like those physical interventions?
We stop securitization, which has led to interventions.
Okay, sure. Let's talk about like these meritocracy arguments.
Mm-hmm.
What gets used if SAT and the ACT aren't used as like determiners of like how to get into college?
There would probably shifts to like it's hard to say. As per the 1AC evidence, there's a current like anti-lead student testing movement where students are less focused on testing, and there's also cards about why college admissions shape the way that the rest of people act. So there are cards that talk about like if Harvard were to stop taking the SAT and the ACT, there would be a shift in like value, what would be considered more important values.
What values? What do those get aligned to?
Yes, commitment to others and like being like a good human and having respectable like morals.
Sure. Your evidence cites things like multi-day interviews.
Sure.
How do low-income or like students from like low-income families access these multi-day interviews, which often require them to like fly out to different universities and be on campus?
They don't. Universities have interviewers in every city. Like my mom interviews for the college that she went to, even though she doesn't live in Pennsylvania. She still conducts interviews there. It's also much more affordable than paying like $200
How do students conduct multi-day interviews when they also, for example, have to work like jobs like throughout, like for example, on certain days and can't miss those things? This seems to prioritize.
I don't understand your question because that also assumes that SAT and ACT don't do that, but students have to take like 6 hours out of their day to take it. They like go to test prep sites. Like obviously people make claims that alternatives are better than status quo.
Why are the SAT and the ACT like? Why do they produce these racial gaps?
Why?
Yeah,
like, we've made claims about why the like setup
and I'm asking
are
about
bad, about why they reflect the dominant ideologies. I like 60% of white people taking the SAT.
My question is why do the SAT and the ACT like cause a racial gap?
And I've answered that question by talking about why.
You said it reflects inequality.
Questions are racially biased. They're used to separate undervalued versus overvalued achievers. What
does the second part mean?
This like the meritocracy claim.
Yep.
The meritocracy claim is the idea that the SAT is like it's like a false idea that the SAT is objective and you can use it to pull yourselves up by the bootstraps, and it ignores like structural factors.
Why can the SAT not be used as a determining factor? Is my question.
Like the SAT is not objective. We've read like 4 cards. You're probably gonna read like the DeBoer or like the cards from people in the testing industry. All of our cards in the AC verse that. I'll take credit. You gonna use this?
Actually, I'll use cards. It's fine. Huh? Yeah. I'll just. It's too often the case. Counterprotests high schools in the United States ought to require every student to take the SAT or ACT free of charge during school hours and require 2 mandatory practice sessions prior to testing going. And all 322. Well-connected person indicted this month did just allegedly commit fraud and pay buyers. Authorities say they also hired tutors to increase their scores on the SAT and ACT. Limiting the SAT would insult them would make it worse by removing the one relatively objective admissions criterion. The test clearly says verbal and mathematical skills, which is a century of psychological sciences are not mere reflections of operating ability. Tests like the SAT and the ACT are strongly predictive of success in college and beyond, even after accounting for students' socioeconomic status. Like the SAT were nothing but a well-tested for which parents would not have had to cheat to get their kids into the latter two schools. In reality, they had to fake intellectual ability. A worried 1%er might campaign to remove test standardized tests from the admissions process to increase the importance of extracurricular activities and interviews and Atlantis Wealth, which provides many more options for gaming these squishy metrics. GPAs were inflated from 2005 to 2016, the richest parts of North Carolina than the rest of the state. There's no peer-reviewed scientific evidence that coaching can reliably provide more than a modest boost, especially one simple packed effects and other expected improvements from retake and tests are accounted for. The recent movement to make tests optional does not seem to have increased student body diversity. The SAT, ACT for all is a universal requirement that every high school student take a standardized college admissions test free of charge during school hours. Have held underprivileged students have far more than eliminating the test. We would add a mandatory practice run or two to help mitigate differences in preparation familiar among test takers. Simply taking practice tests will increase scores in the final test, even in the absence of other preparation activity. Universal testing is provided by economists who identify as hidden supply of high potential students from low-income families. Even without such changes, standardized test scores are more objective, predictable, and verifiable than any of the other criteria used in college admissions, and it solves. This is empirically proven. Dynarski 18. There are many logistical hurdles on the road to college. A few low-income youth decide against college. The ACT and they miss a key deadline. The ACT and SAT are required. This is straightforward if you have internet access to a computer or credit card and a car. If you're missing any of these resources, it's a lot more challenging. ACT or SAT is now given in school for free. This is an attractive feature in Michigan. ACT became part of the test required. Michigan's high school students taking college entrances again rose from 54% to nearly 99% for among low-income students for every 1,000 low-income students who had taken the test before 2007 and scored well. Another 480 college-ready low-income students were uncovered by the universal test. Next up. Other systematic disadvantages inevitably harm poor students. That turns the case. Meltzer 18 factors underlie so many aspects of admission that eliminating standardized testing would do little to eliminate wealthy students' advantage. That an admissions process devoid of scores would be much more reliant on transfer. Well-off students have access to advanced classes, higher grades at the GPA. So if students at private high schools climb to 8%, private schools devise their own grading system. Private school students have access to high-priced academic tutoring grades. Unlike the scores can be affected by purely subjective measures such as extra credit and parental willingness to lobby for things like that. A test retakes and greater rate for class participation. The essay would take on additionally. Officers can't tell when applicants' work is not their own. Institutions give an advantage to full-pay students and privileged applicants attend schools that work guidance counseling can ensure admissions offices. A student with simple profile but no scores from a school that really sends graduates to that college will be viewed as a wildcard. Admissions officers take shortcuts to their biases more so than they already do. Systematic disadvantages permeate every aspect of the admissions process. Standardized testing is an easy scapegoat. It exposes the extent to which grades have been inflated. Some disadvantaged students achieve high scores on their own, and rich private schools have an incentive to inflate GPAs. That's marked as 17. Grade inflation accelerating schools. Schools tend to buy higher income who are also more likely to be white. This widens or lead private schools in particular to be attractive, parenting to be able to accommodate their students to select colleges so they are incentivized to get better grades. Parents of students in suburban schools pressures principals and teachers. The problem takes on even greater consequences. ACT and SAT tests optional and rely more on GPAs. At some institutions just for this, many admissions officers don't have the research to do that level of analysis. Colleges can't really dig into the content of the high school experience. Big state schools that are dealing with 50,000 applications. They can't just say there's great inflation here but not there. They're just looking at GPAs even if they do have the capacity. A university is rewarded by college ranking for accepting applicants whose GPAs are the highest, and standardized testing is key to differentiate between inflated GPAs. Admissions officers don't check Buckley, and because 18 standardized testing helps break that traffic jam. Without standardized tests, admission staff would be tasked with using a high school grade point average to break where the student will thrive academically. The schools that liberally assign high grades may disadvantage some students. The students whose performance rate truly justifies A grades are not discernible from students with more modest classroom performance. They rarely can college admissions staff access transcripts. While all students from a high school graduating class of process comparing transcripts side by side would be your own risk. And standardized testing in conjunction with GPA is the best predictor of success. Their studies ignore many different factors, even if they win that second, 18 grades are significant measures of student mastery. Grades are related to real-world outcomes, including job performance, has tended to be the second best predictor of college grades after high school GPA. The combination of the two works even better. Correlations fall around 0.35 for college. Even correlations of 0.20 can be extremely important, but these are underestimates. We don't directly have students with low test scores but have performed because they were not admitted. Students in college don't all take the same classes. Disciplines do not have the same grading standard. Difficulties results in a sizable increase in predictive value. The test predict grades throughout the college, not just the first year students who are in the top end. The scores are 4 times more likely to earn a B average or better. Test scores are associated with taking more advanced courses. Link indicates a large cumulative difference in the pursuit of more in-depth knowledge. Test scores are strongly related to faculty evaluations of students' creativity. Neither of these outcomes is easy to predict. Test scores end up being the only admission tool with substantial evidence regarding their effectiveness. Alternative measures have worse predictive power than test scores. The stronger scores are associated with better grades or job performance. A grade inflation margin on the high school and college levels. It would be almost to put too much emphasis on a single piece of information admissions decision because it will be gained as it already happened for states that automatically admit a top percentage of high school students. In that case, First of all, they don't solve any of these. They don't solve anything about intervention. It's an absurd claim to make that like banning the SAT would not result in decreased amounts of foreign interventions, even if the same logic of securitization is used. That is just not applied. Also, contingent invocations of security are key to concrete change requirement and tend to shift away from a security enforcement power. Inequalities that states have greater freedom to intervene. The citizens of these states have no way of controlling property. State shift away from security is not challenged by the state assessed by without concrete engagement. Critical theory becomes nothing more than a concrete request that people behave naturally. Lack of concrete analysis renders them unable to actually engage with existing power structures. Also, their testing card doesn't make anti-testing student card doesn't make any sense. There's no movement. The cards from 2015, no changes have been made, and it's unclear how any follow-on occurs, especially considering the privatization of university policy. Then their evidence is flawed. The SAT does have strong predictive power. 13 SAT scores have correlate with their college GPA between 0.25 to 2.25. There are problems with the interpretation calculation of these values. The first issue, underestimation of validity due to restriction of population with a correlation of 0.5 split in half. The estimate dropped to 0.33. Estimates can be more accurate. Grades are unreliable. Grades vary considerably between field and rigor. Many such published like corrective technique research critical of the SAT rarely includes any corrections correlation. Improved by 0.3. SAT scores have a strong foundation of predictive power. All of their first of all, they don't say like they can't predict like what exactly, or they don't actually have any evidence about what will fill in after you get rid of the SAT and the ACT. Only we have read evidence on that question. All they say is that it would be good if colleges did this, but not what colleges would actually do. Their evidence just says that it would be better if they had multi-day interviews. One, it's hard to fly over there, which means that it definitely privileges other students and also privileges certain students. And second, that many low-income students actually have to work jobs, which means that doing something like a multi-day interview is just not feasible for them. And all of the reasons for why the SAT privileges SAT and ACT privilege high-income students are solved for by the counterplan. Things like having a practice skills and also taking it during school hours for free. All of those things solve the inequality that they identify. And the test and also the affix address correlation scores and socioeconomic status. Second couple of 18 correlations are not trivial. Incorrectly suggested information one-to-one corresponding between SES level and test score that there is wealthy families do very badly and poor families do very well. Parental some not density components variability within income level band is 94% of the total sample of the SAT measure nothing but SES variability within each band which dramatically smaller than total sample. Strong reference to district that test measure nothing but SES.
Good.
Yeah.
How does the counterplan solve the need to rank people?
I don't know what you mean by that. Our
standardized tests produce bell curves where there's the lower scoring people and the higher scoring people. How does the counterplan?
Sure. The argument is that ranking is inevitable. The question is by what metric
I don't think it is. You have not read.
Okay, so selective. There's obviously a limited number of spots for people who get into college.
Sure.
Correct.
Yeah.
So ranking is inevitable.
No, it's not. It's possible for every single kid in every school.
So you're telling me every single kid can get into selective four-year institutions, which you just agreed.
No, you are conflating. Wait, back up, Calvin. This is my question. You are conflating rankings with if you get into the college or not. I guess my question is, okay. Is it possible, or do you agree GPA does not use bell curves, standardized tests do use bell curves?
I'm not exactly sure what you mean by that. Our argument is that the counterplan resolves the inequalities that you identify with the SAT and the ACT. The reason why the bell curve produces the inequalities that you talk about is because of for example, these students not taking them in the first place, and also because they're not able to take it during school hours for free.
I don't think that. Wait, can I ask my next question?
Our Dynarski evidence identifies that it solves any of the problems with bell curve.
My next question.
Sure,
I don't think that's what the 1AC says.
The evidence says it.
If you think it says something different, that's fine.
Sure.
I guess on the meritocracy stuff, the entirety of the dissat is the SAT's objective. They can bring themselves up by the bootstraps and get into college now. How does this not how does it solve any of the
That's not exactly what the dissat says. The dissat says that even if there are some problems with the SAT, it is still a better metric for determining admissions rather than more subjective criteria. Things like GPA inflation, things like extracurriculars, interviews, all of those things are more affected by wealth and inequality than the SAT are.
You've read
the second argument is that the SAT and ACT plus things like GPA and all of these other metrics combined are a better predictor.
Status.
Conditional.
Okay. The dissat, what's the impact, or is it just more inequality?
More inequality is an impact.
No, I'm saying I meant is there a terminal impact, or is it just
it's just more inequality?
Okay, so just a case term.
I mean, sure.
Okay.
If that's how you want to think about it.
That's fine. You've said that the SAT is a strong predictor. This is talking about why SAT has been a strong predictor of your GPA, not of how well you'll do in college. Where does it say that it predicts college?
Well, no, it talks about things like college grades too. Like
SAT scores have been reported to correlate with
college GPA.
Okay, it doesn't correlate with anything after. Like, are you just saying it
I
correlates?
don't like. I'm not entirely sure what you're asking. The evidence cites that SAT scores are are strongly correlated with college GPA, which is it's about predictor of college success.
That's
college
fine.
GPA.
What's a better predictor? 4 years of how well you do in school, or a test you take on one day?
So I think that completely misses the boat and misses the point. Inflated GPAs are a real thing, and the SAT is able to distinguish between inflated and non-inflated GPAs.
Okay, so count 30. The order is case, counterplane, dispatch. Oh wait, sorry. I'm gonna add one more card. Do you want me to send it at the end or just send it now? Okay, I'll just send it now. I'll take preps.
Yeah, I already started.
Okay, it's okay.
30.
Yeah, I'll send it again. So 2 minutes left?
Yeah.
Tell me when you're good.
Alright.
Vote out to end structural inequality within the college admissions process to fight back against the neoliberal educational system. All of their cards are in the context of the test industrial complex and from people from like the Brookings Institution who the College Board literally pays millions of dollars to inflate stats and write articles and misrepresent data, inflate numbers. You should strike all of it from your flow. The SAT is unique because questions are designated to produce bell curve and they result have to be discriminatory. Source 12 version offer shocking evidence, systemic bias in the SAT logic of question relation, the difference between good and bad is whether it retains the bell curve. The SAT has retained the same sort of curve since 1976 version. I found the neutral test questions, but one or two of the students perform differently. All verbal questions of the SAT have been white advantage questions. This is the fundamental difference between the SAT and the SAT and GPA. All their arguments are defensive, and none of their dissent is offensive because because it doesn't. And the SAT also testing industries inflate predictive value 4 to 800% because they're literally paid to do this. Source 12. When statisticians have the anomaly SAT scores, the test industries claim to find an 8-point boost most often. This is a pretty pathetic value added for the money. We'll concede that if we don't stop any, we don't concede any interventions, which means that they don't get the impact turn. They say that our evidence is flawed, but this dude was literally paid by the college college board to write this paid by the college board to write this article, and we've already indicted the leadership. This is talking about achievement gaps, and it doesn't address the structural problems that have led to the achievement gaps in the first place. We'll do that work on the counterplan flow. The counterplan. One count is a voting multiple underscore out to the ballot screws the time control makes every advocacy no issue, but then because we have to account for the world of the counterplan and go and paradigm. The problem isn't with the score differential, it's with the predictive ability paradigm, which is the futuralist bullshit that reinforces inequalities. That's the steal. Insofar as they continue their standardized tests that have to produce the bell curve, it's about predicting the future, and as far as GPAs are not, which is the reason why we impact turn their shifted argument. The root cause. SAT reform doesn't address underlying the disease of neoliberalism, which will only recreate a failed system. That's what send meritocracy. The counterplan feeds into the meritocracy that sanitizes the educational system by telling minorities you couldn't succeed before, but now you can. When reality is structural inequalities makes meritocracy inevitable. That's how when the SAT doesn't solve equality and trades off with in-class time instruction, and it's worse for students. Green 16 more required standardized tests for many poor minority students to make them feel like they're failing. This will take them away from something else. And how does giving a test poor kids when the results of the SAT are strongly correlated, they come out as giving the test to make all the different GPA. Thumbs the SAT and predicting college successes. These people are really paid by the college board to write this article, but it has empirically failed multiple times. Also, the multi-day interview stuff. Interviews happen at like your local Starbucks, which means they don't have to fly anywhere, and there's no correlation. We've already impact turned your shift. We've impact turned your shift arguments, but on the dissent now, no shift. Removing test spills over and moves away from the paradigm that we must rank in the first place. Even if there's some shift in the app, it's a step in the right direction by creating momentum to challenge the testing and does so accomplish that statement. They say that no shift are cards from 2015, but there is shift. Less students have been taking the standardized tests, and even if there hasn't been shift now, the unique internal link is ending all standardized tests, because then there will be a shift entirely. They've also conceded the college admissions shape how people act. A card which talks about the college admissions shape what students value, and once they add standardized tests, it will focus less on academic achievement and more about our commitment to others, which will make us better human beings. Also, shift is good. The SAT is uniquely bad because of the predictive ability paradigm. They attempt to measure future potential, which is bad, and it cements neoliberalism. That's the also colleges have their own GPA system. They strip high school GPAs and use their own calculation, which takes out your GPA inflation arguments. Even if it's true, colleges know the difference between private inflated schools and high school schools, so it doesn't solve. Also, the SAT is worse. This is not offense for them because it only says that other things can be bad, but if we win that tests are bad, we solve the proximate violence and it's tried out for the affirmative. Also, it's not any colleges are already using the other methods to evaluate students. The plan just take standardized testing off the table because it's the most inequitable. We solve the worst manifestations of college subjectivity and judging because the SAT is not an objective metric, and even if it was, it cannot predict your future success. Even the college board admits the GPA is better. Source 13. The formulation of the SAT is being the misleading and half-truth, the best predictor. The high school GPA has been great. GPA is the valuable, the variable that holds the highest, such as the correlation with cumulative GPA and performance. And then the test where there is no correlation between GPA. There's a correlation between GPA and income, and they do not level the playing field because they reinforce the existing social hierarchies along class, gender, and racial lines because they fail to address the root cause. Source 12. These particular tests are discriminatory, not all tests discuss social selections as an academic selectivity. The more one that relies on the SAT, the more social disparities are passed along. An argument is that the test level of the playing field. Researchers found the opposite.
I'll take part. What was the argument on Condo's bad?
Condo's bad. Multiple unreciprocal routes to the ballot screws the time crunch when AR makes every advocacy and no risk issue for the neg because we have to account for the world of the counterplan and the status quo.
The order is the practice set, counterplan, or not the practice set, but like the GPA set, the counterplan, and then the case.
Shift this at counterplan case.
Very good.
Just clarifying it up.
The App's approach to solving inequality is wrong. Our argument is not that the system is perfect, but that the affirmative solution places a greater emphasis on the more subjective aspects of an application that increase disparities in wealth and race. Just saying that the SAT and the ACT are bad are not enough. They also need to identify concrete alternatives that colleges will take and why those metrics would be better. But they do not have any. They just say that there would be other forms of fill-in, but those are also subjective. The first argument we'll go for is GPA inflation. Grade inflation accelerating right now in schools disproportionately attended by high-income white students. Meltzer says that private schools had GPA inflation near 8%, whereas city schools rarely budge. The way evidence gives a fantastic example in North Carolina, where the richest parts of the state experience more GPA inflation than the rest of the state combined. Wealth is the determiner. Rich private schools are incentivized to give higher grades to tout student acceptance to selective colleges, and wealthier parents are able to pressure principals and teachers to provide inherently subjective measures like extra credit and arbitrary weighted courses. Standardized tests are the only way to resolve that issue. Without standardized tests, colleges are forced to use high school grades as the sole metric. The Marcus evidence makes it clear that admissions offices simply don't have the resources to determine how to adjust for inflation. Big state schools are often dealing with over 50,000 applicants and are unable to determine where inflation is occurring and by how much. Even if they're available, universities have an incentive to accept students with inflated GPAs due to a rise in college rankings, which standardized tests would normally prevent by allowing for a different metric. GPAs also aren't immune to tutoring. Grades undoubtedly benefit from long tutoring sessions that are expensive and only affordable by the top 1%. The second argument that we'll go for is other subjective factors. The Meltzer evidence indicates that admissions officers, when faced with the lack of an objective metric to evaluate applicants, end up resorting to their own personal biases, which hurts minority students even more. Essays are often written by college prep counselors, and so are video components. All of these can only be combated with the standardized tests that the app removed. That outweighs in turns the case. Wealth disparities in standardized testing are far less prominent than in GPA. GPA inflation being skewed towards the wealthy is a result of millions of dollars being funneled by rich parents into private schools over years that guarantee better college admissions from all aspects of their application. Extracurricular connections, rec letters, extra. The SAT is just one part, and our weight evidence concludes from a study that money can't buy large increases on standardized tests, which is why rich parents are looking to falsify scores and buy admissions, which means comparatively we control a much larger impact to inequality. Their only arguments is that it would change the way that ranking operates, but ranking is inevitable. If there's limited spots in colleges and universities, and then that means that students have to be ranked in order to determine that some students would be a better fit for the university, and which means that there would be some ranking metric. Our argument is that the SAT would be a better predictor, or the SAT plus GPA would be a better predictor than just the GPA alone. The reason why is because the way that GPA inflation works is that if like two students with 5.0 submit to a college, the only way that they can determine if one GPA is inflated and the other one was actually earned is if they use like the SAT as like a metric. If one of them got like a 900, the other one got like a 1300, then they would be able to determine which one was actually like which student like actually earned the GPA and which one was inflated. That is the only way that standardized tests can allow colleges to determine if GPA is inflated. Also, no, standardized tests are still remaining. Their anti-testing shift stuff doesn't make any sense. If you get rid of the SAT, it's obviously not true that we ought to suddenly just start evaluating applicants based on like how good of people they are. And even if it is based on how good of people that they are, the only people who can afford to take time out of their to help others rather than help themselves is in fact high-income students that are able to, for example, go on trips to say Mexico and build houses for the poor, or for example, like participate in like Global Glimpse and all of these other programs. Those are disproportionately help the wealthy in the first place, which is what they don't understand. That their argument is about future potential. The GPA arguments and all the GPA inflation stuff itself is neoliberal and also reinforces that type of inequality. Their own GPA calculations, and the colleges can't do their own GPA calculations, and colleges can't test it. They don't have the time to, and they also don't want to because they want to arbitrarily inflate their ranking, which was the Marcus evidence. They have not read any evidence on this question, so you should strongly err negative here. This SAT, and they say that the SAT is also bad. However, argument is that the SAT might be bad, but it's definitely still better than the more subjective aspects. Also, it's not the worst form of subjectivity. That's just patently false. We have read evidence on this, and even if GPA is a better predictor than the SAT plus GPA is better and has a 0.3 correlation, which is definitely significant, and from the Stanley and Kunkel evidence that they've conceded. The counterplan. The counterpoint solves the entirety of the case. The reason why inequality exists within standardized testing is largely due to a lack of preparedness for minority students because they don't have access to preparation materials because they're often unaware of how and when to take tests in the first place. Ensuring every student takes a standardized test in addition to 2 practice sessions drastically reduces racial, ethnic, and income disparities. We'll address condo at the end, but the predictive it makes the predictive paradigm more accurate because they're able to give practice sessions. They have not refuted that, and yes, we give equal access to minority students by allowing for those practice sessions which move that like 480 every 1,000 low-income students actually end up doing better, and also the prep sessions solve about like they said that the people don't like taking the SAT in school, but that doesn't assume the prep sessions that we talk about, and the interviews. If people are working jobs, they obviously can't attend the interviews either. Condo. Conditionality is good. We get 1 conditional advocacy. The critical thinking for strategic one-year choices and adaptation information, negative ideological flex. Condo is key on a topic with 0 disaggregate except the shift. It is set allows for rigorous testing, research, competitive acting, ideological education, logical decision, judgment for the best policy. Anything else is in real world terms or offense, and also advocacy skills. It tests core arguments from different viewpoints, both educational depth and policy making. Education outweighs fairness. It's the only portable skill from big. Time skew is not unique to conditional advocacy. We could read infinite disides or topicality that proves that they can't solve their abuse claims. You should default on our offense. They tune our checks because they'll only go for one thing, and also the app is designed to the harms of the so, which means that they really only need to respond to one argument. This is like completely frivolous. Also, onto the case, the framing evidence. The weight evidence says that their studies are actually the ones that are propaganda. The reason why people want to get rid of tests is because they can't pay them off in order to do better, which means that you can turn all their arguments. Also, they just can't say that every study we read is somehow like funded by College Board. It's by educational professionals. The Brookings Institute is not paid off. They just don't have any evidence for these things. And also, they conceded that the SES correlation is massively exaggerated, and that also if minorities score better, those racist questions are actually eliminated from the thing, which makes the test automatically better.
2 minutes. Case, counter, plan, decide. Good? Okay.
If we win that the SAT is worse than we win this debate, there were so many conceited arguments. It was a nice pre-written overview, but he has missed a lot of the nuances of the debate. The first one is the SAT is unique because it necessitates producing a bell curve and stratifying people into higher scoring groups deemed value, lower scoring groups deemed unvalued, unlike GPAs, where everyone can get a 4.0 GPA, and it's not in comparison to others. The SAT feels the need to predict how well and stratify people into certain groups. It always affects the marginalized groups, and the reason why the GPAs are much better. They've also conceded that the testing industry inflates predictive values 400 to 800% because they literally pay money to make it seem like the test does good, does good, but GPA is obviously a much better college predictor because it's your 4 years versus one single test we've taken. The two main arguments we're going to go for. First is the biggest drop is this no shift. He's conceded that colleges won't shift to worse methods because our Bateman evidence indicates that the SAT is part of a parallel system of idealistic imagined meritocracy. Removing it will deconstruct the system, spilling over to destroy the paradigm that we must find an objective ranking for students in the first place. He's conceded that we saw back for the meritocracy of the neoliberal system. He did not answer any of the nuances of our arguments and just read his overviews and said like GPAs are bad too, and colleges will adopt comprehensive holistic reviews instead. But independent of what we replace it with, removing the SAT is still not good. Even if there is some sort of shift to this, we are still going to impact the shift. That shift is good because any alternative is better than the SAT and the ACT. They're uniquely bad because their predictive ability paradigm to test your future potential and your aptitude. Our tests don't have that other GPAs don't have that paradigm where it's like how well will you do in your future and assumes that what you get on a score is how well you do for your rest of your life. That's the our evidence. Only we have evidence that speaks specifically the predictive ability paradigm, and that's the internal link chain and assessments cause real world violence. The counter plan, all of the arguments on the counter plan were dropped. The first one is the meritocracy thing. The counter plan has the exact meritocratic logic that you weren't able to succeed before because the system was screwed against you, but now obviously you can't succeed because you have the SAT, which ignores the structural factors that play into the SAT, and the counter plan cannot resolve any of those factors. Couple things. One, they've conceded that students hate taking the SAT because it just reaffirms the idea that they're a failure. Students will pay hundreds of dollars, and the counter plan does nothing to resolve any of this. In addition, it trades off with what you're actually doing in class time, which would make it much worse for students. The biggest detriment that they've conceded on the counter plan that will lose them the debate and also applies to the shift test is they've conceded that colleges strip high school GPAs and use their own scoring mechanisms to account for inflated GPAs. Obviously, they don't look at GPAs the same from high school students, from public school students versus private school students. Every single college does it, and it's a reason why none of their arguments apply. We have won that GPAs are better, and even if you don't think we've won that GPAs are better, SATs do not level the playing field because there's still structural barriers, and none of it is offense. None of it is offense for them. All of those evaluative methods of students exist right now in the status quo, which makes it try or die for the app. Both sides have agreed that the college admissions process is bad right now, but they don't do anything to reform it, which makes it prior die because we control the root cause and only removing it causes the shift and spillover.